First time I've ever done something like this.
There's always first time. Okay. Hi, my name is Kevin Ye. I'm the country chair of MDRT South Africa. Join me as I interview 40 financial advisors who are also MDRT members in South Africa as they share their life story, experience, and tips on personal finance. So today I'm so privileged to have Nigel HENSON on our program, and he's a financial advisor, MDRT member. Nigel, how are you doing?
Well, Kevin, yourself?
Fine, thanks. And Nigel, can you tell us about where did you grow up and what did you study?
I grew up in what is now called Zimbabwe, but in those days it was a colonial type country called Rhodesia.
Yeah.
And I had a very privileged existence. I went to a private school. I went to university in South Africa, Rhodes University, where I studied law. I then returned to Rhodesia and worked for government as a public prosecutor because I had government loans and government bursaries. I had to pay my own way through university. Right. And when I'd finished paying off those bursaries, then I came to South Africa.
So when was that you came to South Africa?
I came to South Africa in 1976, and funnily enough, the first place I lived was Skopje, which is 10 kilometers away from where I am now, 45 years later. So for 45 years, I've gone from Skopje to Durban and back again, which is quite funny when you think of the circles of life, isn't it? And I came here to do articles for the firm of attorneys in Durban. I did articles for 2 years. I passed my sidebar exams, including bookkeeping, can you believe, which isn't my greatest. But then I ran into a problem called Afrikaans. As a youngster, I had university, Latin, and I had A-level, the English A-level exams, French and university German. So I knew a lot of languages as a young man, but for some reason, maybe the politics of the time, I don't know, Afrikaans and I were just never good together. So after 2 years and many attempts to pass Afrikaans exams, I hadn't cracked it. So I left the legal profession and I joined Old Mutual as a legal advisor in 1978. I was the first legal advisor ever who only dealt with independent salesmen in Natal and the Eastern Province.
So you have a long career in the insurance industry. And where are you now?
I'm in Umkomaas, which is 10 kilometers away from Skopje, where I first arrived 45 years ago. Umkomaas is a very pleasant little seaside town. The reason I came here, you'll see from my answer to later questions in this interview, but primarily when you talk about my target markets, there are 4 retirement villages around here. When they're all full, they will number some 1,600 retired people. And with respect, there is no one in this area with my experience, my background, and the experience of multiple disciplines I've been through in my career. So I figured for a sort of pre-retirement stopover, this was a good market to be in. Then came COVID. Everyone locked down, everyone wore masks. I wasn't allowed to have seminars, my normal way of, introducing myself to people. I couldn't meet as many people as I normally do. So as a new agent in town, it's delayed me by 18 months, but now we're beginning to get off the ground again.
COVID has been a challenge for all of us, change the way we interact, socialize, and do business. In terms of where you are now and Scottsburg, I remember, I think it's 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I took the family to Durban and then to South Coast. It was the first time we're in South Coast. And I took the family for shark cage diving. It was quite an experience. And my kids love it, and 3 boys. But for me and my wife, it was a torture. I felt like I was going to die. I got so seasick, and I just felt like I will never do it again. So it's a beautiful part of the country, but that's not. I'm not a sea person.
I'm not a sea person either. I look out of my office window, I see the boats go out, the divers to go shark cage diving, but I'm a golfer. I look out my other window and there's the 18th hole of the Umkomaas Golf Club, of which I'm a member.
So how did you become a financial advisor?
Well, I became a financial advisor because as a legal advisor working for Old Mutual, I worked with some of the top independent salesmen in Natal. And it became clear to me, given the training I had on income tax analysis, estate planning, estate duty analysis, that when a big sale was concluded for a farmer, say, to buy life assurance to pay for his estate duty, I was in fact doing the selling. The salesman was there to pick up the check. And I thought, no, this is the wrong way around. Now, bear in mind, I'd never sold anything in my life apart from rag magazines as a student. So with much fear and trepidation, I joined a big brokerage as a junior salesman. And they sent me to see people in factories and rough working conditions that I bombed there. I really didn't do well there because it was weird. As a new salesman, my natural market was the top, the wealthy people, the people with big estate. And starting off at the bottom just didn't work for me. Fortunately, in my second month, I met a wealthy farmer, sorted his estate, and I was man of the month for Alexander Forbes in April 1981. And from then on, things rolled.
Given your experience and qualification, if you put it to the right market, then will work very well for you. And so what have been your target markets?
My target market all my life has been people like me, self-employed people, entrepreneurs, and now that I'm older, retired people. So I worked on tax planning and estate planning my whole life. As a young man, I lectured on it. I lectured on the formation of trusts, on the administration of trusts, on all the technical sides, the legal technical sides of life assurance. And I've learned a lot, obviously, about underwriting and the various types of investments and markets. And I take a very keen interest now in markets because that is my people. I'm looking after their pensions. I'm looking after their investments. I have a permanent subscription to Bloomberg, and I watch Bloomberg in the middle of the night when everyone else is asleep. And that gives me news that I know about the next day.
Nigel, tell us about your company, your practice. Are you an independent financial advisor now with your own business?
We're coming to a question I know which is headed my biggest challenge. So I wonder if perhaps we could spin it around a bit, Kevin. Let me start with the challenge, and that'll lead to where I am now. We like to share with our fellow salesmen our biggest challenge in life. My life ran fairly smoothly and very wonderfully until 2011. In 2011, I turned 60 and I had no succession plan. My son has emigrated to America, where he's a very successful engineer working with Continental Tires. Funny enough, at Indianapolis, he's on the team there where they design tires for the race cars. You know, lovely place. But I mean, he's got no interest in financial advice. So I then made, in retrospect, a not very good decision to go back to Old Mutual. Because they said to me, if I bought my business, which was then worth some 200 million rand to them, they would train up a young man to succeed me and guarantee we paid for my business, which seemed too good to be true. It was. 5 years later, with respect, I couldn't find anyone among the colleagues that I had there who I felt I could entrust my clients to. I'm afraid I'm fussy. I've had a lot of partners in my business through my life, and I've fired most of them. I am incredibly particular when it comes to giving my clients what I think they need. I could be wrong, but I like it done my way. I like it done by the book. So at that point, I said to them, well, thanks to the right guys, but I have to go. So an old friend of mine had a really big business, I mean, one of the biggest brokers in South Africa. And he said he would welcome me aboard with my clients. And he, because he's a big business, he had young men, young accountants, you know, people trained in our type of business to succeed him. He's a bit older than me and succeed me. So I went to Old Mutual. I said, well, sorry, guys, there's a clause in our agreement that says we can shake hands and leave as friends. And that is what I wish to do. Oh, no, they said, there's another clause that entitles us to claim your clients as ours, a restraint of trade agreement. And bear in mind, it was so one-sided, given they were able to claim those clients without paying me. Normally in restraint of trade agreement, you pay for the man's business, then he's under restraint of trade. This agreement was so weird that they could do it without paying me. And I was a fool. When I signed the agreement, I should have taken proper legal advice. Instead, I took it 5 years later. Was at that time, I left. I said, well, that's it, I'm out of here. So they sued me. So we ended up in October 2016 in the Supreme Court in Durban, and I lost. They won a 2-year restraint of trade, which meant that for the next 2 years, I was banned in law from giving financial advice to anyone.
Wow.
It meant I had no income. It meant I had no capital. It meant I had no business at all.
Wow.
That was my biggest challenge. So I'll now tell you a rugby story. You may think I'm meander, but it comes back to the point. 2015, you may remember national trauma. The Springboks played Japan in a World Cup qualifier and we lost. You remember that game? It was playing in the background as I was hosting, if you can use that word, the after funeral party for a late friend of mine, a Welshman. And his son, who I'd never met, is sitting, chatting to me. I'm trying to make the kid feel at home. I've never met him before. And he's not a rugby follower. He also lives in America. Behind me, the Springboks are getting thrashed by the Japanese. And I couldn't help to give the old rugby joke where they're at the funeral and the news came over the radio. England won 3-2 and it cast a gloom over the whole proceedings. Yeah. So basically, that's what happened to us. The Boks lost whatever they lost by, and it cast a gloom over what was already a gloomy day. But the Japanese method for winning that game, Springboks are big and strong. They come powering through the line out, and they did it the other day against New Zealand. They just pushed the people over and scored tries. The Japanese were clever. They just got out of the way. When you get out of the way and there's nothing stopping your maul, people tend to fall off and go offside. The next thing is a penalty against you. So I looked at that and thought, I'm going to be a Japanese. This big old mutual, this huge company, the whole might of the law on top of me, I'm disappearing. I'm getting out of the industry for the next 2 years. So I stopped being a financial advisor. I reinvented myself and I became a legal advisor. A one-man sole proprietor. And my clients signed agreements empowering me to appoint their financial advisor. You see the circuit there. And in fact, if you look, Kevin, obviously my lawyers and I studied the definition of financial advice very hard. And financial advice has to result in the buying or altering or implementing a financial product. The advice I was giving was none of those things. It was appointing a financial advisor and then advising my clients on their tax, their estate duty, their income, their investment needs, all the things I've advised on all my life. Okay, downside. And a very kind friend of mine who since passed away came to help me. He agreed to be appointed as people's financial advisor, but I had to give him half my fee. And bear in mind, I had a 300 million rand book. And when you shake up a business, and I told Old Mutual this, third parties mainly win. 200 million of that book went to third parties. 20 million
during that period of time.
200 million went to third parties out of 300.
So they couldn't keep the clients. They didn't have someone to look after them.
They couldn't give them. That's why I wanted to leave, because they didn't have the expertise. They just didn't have it. So these people went to clever guys in Joburg, whatever, because they thought I was an idiot. Well, I was, for getting in such trouble. Because, when you lose the court case against the big insurer, boy, you don't look too bright. And I didn't feel too bright for a long time. But I'm a fighter. So anyway, I settled down. I held on to the clients, God bless them, great guys who stayed with me. And after and during the course of this, I met a young man who worked with my first friend, who was frightened away by Old Mutual and couldn't take me into his business after I lost the case. This young man left my friend's company, and he said to me when I started my restraint, he said, Nigel, I like working with you. I want to work with you again. I'm starting my own company. If we're both still solvent in 2 years' time, let's talk. So in October 2018, we spoke. And that young man is now my boss and my partner, great young chap, young, he's 50 this year. He's not younger than I am. He's also a qualified lawyer. Our company is called Ocean Wealth Management Pty Limited. He's the sole director and shareholder, and I'm an employee. I see. And that's our partnership. But you see, our company head office is in Durban, and that's where Brett and my partner and Michelle, the admin lady, work there. I'm like the Umkomaas branch. I have my own little office down here, but all the main paperwork, records, and the rest, because of POP and the rest, we keep that under lock and key in Durban. So it's actually been a good challenge for me, because the paperwork is forever shuttling to and fro from Durban. I've done a lot more electronic filing than I've ever done in my life. And I can recreate my records from my computer without needing paper files, which I thought was a good learning curve. Sorry to go on at length, but it's been an interesting trip. Oh, sorry, the book last month got back over 100 million. So I'm one third of the way that I need to go. And it's taken 5 years, but I lost 2 to the restraint of trade and 18 months to COVID. So it hasn't taken that long. Give me another 2 years and I'll be back at top of the table.
Okay, that's quite a...
That's the pledge. 2 years, I'll be back at the top of the table.
Yeah, fascinating story, I must say, in terms of what you have gone through. And I'm sure there are lessons for the viewers of this episode. So, Nigel, what's your secret as a successful financial advisor?
Yeah, it's always difficult to take one element of all the things you do for clients and say that is my secret for success. The late John Savage, I think you're probably a bit young to have ever listened to him. When I was young, I watched his
DVD. Yeah, but I could see it's like maybe 40 years ago.
Yes, he came to South Africa and lectured when I was a young broker. I've met the man, I've sat at his feet and picked up his ideas. And he used to say, you must be everything to your client. Health counselor, financial advisor, lawyer, house salesman, etc., etc. I've helped clients sell their houses. I've helped clients with their matrimonial problems. I've helped clients in all sorts of ways that aren't strictly financial advice, because I look on my clients as a family. And that is why, in terms of numbers of bodies, most of them have stayed with me. Because we've been together for 30 years plus, all of us. And we're going through this life together. And I look on them as my family. And I think the one thing I would say that I always try to do, and I can't really judge myself, but I always go the extra mile. My clients can rely on me. If it's humanly possible on heaven or on earth, I will do it.
Sure.
And that's just what I do, because I'm built that way. I don't like failure. So I've learned a lot of lessons in humility over the last 5 years. That's the biggest lesson you learn from something like this, is humility, which I was due for a big dose of.
Wow.
But I would say going the extra mile is the secret for success I've had.
Wonderful. What has been the one client story that stuck with you over the years?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think my best, and it's not really, again, an insurance story, but it was fun. My best and one of my biggest clients of all time was a man called Dennis Barker. He passed away some years ago. I don't know if you've heard of Selborne Golf Estate.
Yeah,
Selborne Golf
I think that's on the north coast, right?
It's on the south coast.
South coast.
It's 20 kilometers away from where I'm sitting now.
Okay.
It's the other side of Scotland, near Pennington.
Right.
Selborne Golf Estate was the first golf estate with residential housing built in South Africa in the 1980s. Yeah. My client, Dennis Barker, had a farm there, and he took me around in his buck and said, young Nigel, this is going to be a golf course. I said, what? We went through rivers, up and down through the bush, around the hills. He says, that'll be a par 3. That'll be a par 4. Yes, wow. Dennis, I believe you. It'll be a par 5. Yeah. It's all trees. My friends are coming to help me. It is the most budget-friendly, designed and built golf course in the country, because the local farmers all chipped in. They bought their bulldozers, they bought their labor. They tried to hire a golf course architect, a man I also knew was a bit pompous. They didn't like him, so they threw him out. So you've actually got a farmer's design, a farmer's built golf course, which costs probably 10% per hole of the cost of any other golf course built here in the last 40 years. Yeah. And it's a lovely golf course. If you ever go down the south coast and just play around there, it's still a lovely golf course. So and that was my client experience. It was so tremendous to be part, because golf is my passion. That's what I always do in my spare time. And to actually see a golf course built from raw bush into what is now like a 5-star resort was a wonderful experience. And I still play golf there today.
Yeah. I wish I could play golf. Unfortunately, my golf skill is non-existent. I don't like hitting a small white ball, but I love walking on the golf course. But I wish in South Africa we have more people like that, that can do something really constructive and build something instead of getting things wasted away, as we see currently in South Africa. So this
on that point, Kevin, one of my points of pride is I have 2 clients. One passed away, one's still living, who've been nominated in the local newspaper as Entrepreneur of the Month.
Yeah.
Dennis was one of them, and the
Right.
other gentleman's still living, so I won't mention his name. But it's such feeling of pride when your client is the man in the whole province who's the entrepreneur of the month.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful story. Let's turn to MDRT. So how did you learn about MDRT?
I first got to hear about MDRT in about 78, 79. As a legal advisor, I spent a lot of time with the brokers, the salespeople whom I was helping, and some of them were MDRT members. Yeah. They told me about Bill Ben Feldman. They got me interested in listening to stories about what MDRT stood for, what it had done, what the famous salesman had done. And I've always been an ambitious person, so I thought, boy, I need to learn from these people. Because that is how you succeed. You need to learn from the best. Yeah. And we had a club of our own in South Africa called the Multi-Rand Forum. We started calling it the Million Rand Forum, but I think there were a few copyright issues. It ended up as the Multi-Rand Forum. And that was when John Savage came out here. He spoke to us. And there's a chap from Australia who's still alive. I Googled him the other day. The name will come to me in a minute. I argued with him about ties. I was in the process of giving up wearing a tie. Remember, this was in the mid-1980s. It was still quite radical in those days.
Okay.
And this gentleman from Australia was saying whether he should wear a striped tie or a spotted tie. And I went up to him afterwards and said, my mate, I don't wear a tie at all. I work in a hot city. My clients are entrepreneurs. They don't wear ties and jackets. Why should I wear a tie? Or he said, you'll never amount to anything if you don't wear a tie. Hello. I've been dressed like this since 1983. Oh, sorry. So that's how I came to know about MDRT. It was from the salespeople I worked with. And then when I became a salesperson myself, I applied, I think, first about 1983. Where's my thinking certificate? Yes. And I think that certificate over there says I became a full member in 1985. Okay. It's still hanging proudly on the wall in my office.
Right. So you've been
I've been a member ever since.
You've been a member for almost 30 years, eh?
Yeah, nearly 40 years.
40 years.
85 wow. From 21 is 36.
Salute. Yeah. You are a veteran.
Thank you.
Then what has been your involvement with MDRT?
Because of our currency problems and my various ups and downs in life, which I won't bore the listeners with right now, I haven't been able to afford to go as often as I would like. In the first flush of new membership, I went to our one and only annual general meeting at Orlando in 1986. Wow. And that was a wonderful meeting. I always remember at the end of the day, it finished on Independence Day, 4th of July. They let off rockets inside the hall. I mean, the South Africans were all sitting there, we're going to get burnt to toast. But these little rockets were so cleverly designed. They had a powder charge which took them 30 foot up into the air and down. They came plop. Yeah. How good is that? Letting off rockets safely inside a big hall full of people. I thought it was so clever. Then the next time I went was around about 2000. That was the top of the table in, again, funny enough, Florida, Disney World, that part of the world.
Yeah.
I attended another top of the table in Las Vegas, interesting Las Vegas, and I attended another one in Palm Springs, California. That's where all my luggage went missing for a week.
Oh.
So I've always had fun going to America. I love going to America, but man, the Rand, when I went in 1986, the Rand was R3.30 to the dollar.
Yeah.
I covered forward. I got private cover at the bank and I paid R2. And when I came back to claim my change after I came back from America, the bank teller said, you can't do this. I said, there, read it and weep. I have a friend who's a bank manager. I know since I cut this deal, private citizens have been forbidden to take forward cover, but I'm the last of the Mohicans. Pay me. Well, they didn't like it. And ever since then, private citizens have been unable to take forward cover. They just won't cover you.
Yeah.
But that was fun.
Okay. Have you been a country chair or on the committees of MDRT?
Unfortunately, this is where I feel a bit guilty, but I've never really been involved in the South African mainstream of committee people with MDRT. I'm not quite sure why. I mean, I've given the odd talk, but I've always been very involved with my church. I've been very involved with my golf club. The golf club was a member of Royal Durban for 40 years. And I was on the committee. I captained one of their league teams. I think probably a bit selfishly, my time was taken up more with golf in the church than it was with insurance organizations. Right. So unfortunately, my service for MDRT is zip. but I love the organization at a distance.
All right. And what does MDRT mean to you?
MDRT to me is a brilliant source of ideas. I mean, I sat with a man in Las Vegas who showed me a simple calculation, multiplying your worst month's income. He was a Scottish Jewish chap from Edinburgh. He showed me on a piece of paper a little calculation. I could multiply your worst month, I think, by 13. Blow me down, I've forgotten it now. I must have been too rich. But you could, and it actually, and everyone in the room didn't blow me down. That was approximately the year's income. Just those simple little things. And then another man went all the way to Palm Springs to go to his seminar on holding seminars. So I decided client seminars would be the way to go. And it was really interesting what he had to say. Generous bloke, he used to buy them dinner. I never quite stretched to buying 50 people dinner, but still, the thought was a good one. And I just love MDRT because you meet different people from all over the world and the ideas. I mean, they have that meeting called Well of the Table. Top of the table, one of the afternoons, you sit in the pub and people trade stories and ideas. And that to me is just wonderful. You can't get it anywhere else.
Yes.
But it's been a long time since I could afford to go. And at the present rate price, I don't know if I'll ever go again.
Next year we have a conference in Sydney, and also the annual meeting is taking place in Boston. So I would love to see you there if we plan accordingly. But hopefully also with the COVID and travel restrictions will be resolved, and then so that we can travel a bit. Nigel, now is the time for 3 quickfire questions. First one is, what time of the day are you most productive? Morning, afternoon, or evening?
Early morning, like 4, 5 o'clock.
Is that the time you wake up?
I wake up 2 or 3 very often.
Wow.
I try to sleep till 4 or 5. But if I'm going to produce things, I do it best before midday.
I see.
After midday, I lose interest pretty rapidly. These days, I normally play golf. So when I was a student, I used to walk up and down the high street in Grahamstown, reciting notes to myself in the dark at 4 in the morning. So it's one of those practices that just goes through, with you in life.
What's your favorite drink?
There we've got to toss a coin. I'd say Scotch whiskey. There's a single malt called Talisker that I picked up in the Ian Rankin novels by Detective John Rabus. And I had my first Talisker in a pub in Edinburgh in 2001. And I can't afford it, but boy, is that the supreme drink of supreme drinks. Many years ago, the conference drink at MDRT top of the table meetings was Johnny Walker Black. And it was free at all the functions. And I love Johnny Walker Black. I drank my airfare over those functions.
Right. Last question. What is something new happening in your life right now?
A cat. We actually had this little animal adopted us. It came wandering up our driveway February this year. I think we were in some lockdown or other. Fairly heavily pregnant, very young. And it looked like it had been thrown out of a good home. It was a well-trained cat. But shame, I've never owned a cat. I've had dogs, but not cats. And at our age, the missus and I did no more animals. But this little animal stole into our hearts. And we actually, cut a long story short, we adopted her, we christened her. Unfortunately, she had to be spayed and the kittens had to be aborted. So I said, hey, one pet I can take, but not 4 or 5, thank you. And she's proved out to be a wonderful addition to the family. She climbs the trees on garden at 90 miles an hour, brings dead lizards and lays them around the house, and generally roars around and entertains everyone. That's been sort of the biggest new thing in my life. Something apart from the work scene, because work's tended to be very mechanical and computerized and blah. I'm a people person. I've really suffered from not being in touch with people this last 18 months. But like I said, it's all coming back.
Nigel, if there's one financial advice or life lesson you'd like to share with the viewers, or maybe to your target market, the retirees out there, what is it?
There's actually, financial advice is really fairly basic, A to B to C. And the old rules, don't put all your eggs in one basket, take second opinions, look before you jump, and generally be aware of what different asset classes in the world are doing, I think is sound financial advice for anyone. And also start young. One of the biggest problems, Kevin, which I think you'll find with most practitioners in South Africa, South Africans don't save. We know the stats, they haven't changed. In the 40 years that I've been in the industry, only 5% of South Africans are ever able to retire. That hasn't changed, not in 40 years, but it's immediately. So, but that doesn't change. And you have to keep on trying to get through to people, even if it's only 100 Rand a month. Start when you're young. You know, the boulder in the hill. It's a little round stone when you're 25. You start at age 50, like so many people do. You try and push your house up the hill.
Yeah.
That's the other one, I think, also. Start young. It makes the job so much easier. Following from that, all my life, particularly the last 20 years, so many people come to you for retirement planning advice, and the bottom line is they haven't got enough money. It's a dreadful position to put an advisor in. I feel so sorry for them. I cut and I stretch, and I get them, obviously, you know, feet and that, they have to sign off on it. But sometimes they have to take the most incredible risks, because I say that's the choice. You either take more risk, pal, or you ask your children for help, or you go destitute. You know, your choice. Make the call. And there's one old we chased markets. When they say property was hot, we chased that and we're getting 18-20% a year. Then we went with offshore equities. But shame, she had a lowly paid job. She'd saved as hard as she could. And she's outlived her money. And in the end, her children had to look after her. But for 20 years, that old dear and I, we kept the wolf at the door by the most amazing financial shenanigans. But what else can you do? The people are too old, they can't work anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just blessed that my career will continue until I die, hopefully.
I wish you stay strong and healthy, and you can serve your clients for many years to come.
Thank you, sir. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, Nigel, it's a pleasure speaking to you.
Thanks for watching. Thumbs up if you like this episode, and share it with your friends.